In my past life, I fought my way through the harem, my hands stained with blood, all for Julian's favor. I've defeated the Empress and trampled on the Empress's favorite concubine, yet I couldn't protect my own child. In the end, I was banished to the cold palace without even a bowl of hot soup to look forward to. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day Julian married his true love. The maid stamped her foot in frustration. Your Highness, if you don't go now, the prince will be lured away by Miss You. I rolled over and shrugged, saying, if you want to take me away, go ahead. In this life, I want none of it. No man, no affection, no Empress's throne. All I want is for my child to grow up safe and sound. But when I stopped arguing, they were the ones who started panicking. One after another. Snow fell all night in the cold palace. The broken window was patched with old paper, and whenever the wind blew, the paper fluttered and rustled. I curled up in the damp bedding, my hands and feet so cold I could no longer feel them. Clara knelt by the bed, holding an empty bowl, her voice hoarse beyond belief. Your Highness, let me go and beg them again. Perhaps the people from the Imperial Household Department will be willing to give us a bowl of hot porridge. I wanted to stop her, but my throat felt as if it were clogged with gravel, and I couldn't get a single word out. Today is New Year's Eve. The palace was brightly lit, and the sound of string and wind instruments drifted through the thick palace walls. The laughter of the concubines could also be faintly heard, and I, the former consort Xiao, the woman whom Julian had favored for 10 years, can now do nothing but lie in the cold palace and wait to die. Clara pushed herself up and walked out. She had a fever for 3 days. Her forehead was burning hot and she was staggering as she walked. I watched helplessly as she fell on the doorstep. She struggled to her feet and tried to go outside. Don't go. I finally managed to squeeze out 2 words. Clara turned to look at me and tears instantly welled up in her eyes. Your Highness, you must not die. I smiled. Why not? I should have died a long time ago. From the day my son was poisoned, I should have died. My son is only 5 years old. Holding the wooden horse I had given him, he said that when father came to visit him, he would recite the poem he had just learned for him. But Julian didn't show up. He was accompanying the Empress as she admired the plum blossoms. Later, my son bled from all 7 orifices and died in my arms. I went looking for Julian like a madman, but he merely frowned and said, without evidence, we must not make false accusations against the Empress. There is no evidence. How ridiculous. All my life, I fought and struggled for him, and because of him, I've become the very person I despise most. In the end, he gave me just 4 words. There is no evidence. Clara climbed up to the side of my bed and grabbed my hand. Her hands were cold, too. Your Highness, if there is a next life, let's not enter the palace again. I looked at the silver hairpin she used to love wearing when she was young. It had now rusted black. I whispered, okay, if there is an afterlife, I don't want Julian anymore. Don't spoil them. Don't worry about the details. And I don't want to see that heartless, ungrateful face either. Just before I lost consciousness, I thought I heard fireworks going off in the distance. The New Year's Eve celebration is underway at the palace, and I died just moments before the new year. Second consort. Second consort. A familiar voice reached my ears. I suddenly opened my eyes. Clara stood by the bed holding a bowl of steaming herbal medicine to help stabilize her pregnancy. Her cheeks were plump and her eyes bright. She no longer looked like the gaunt, emaciated figure she had been in the cold palace. I stared at her blankly, saying nothing for a long time. Clara grew flustered under my gaze. Has the secondary consort been having nightmares? I'll go fetch the family physician right away. I grabbed her hand. Warm. Alive. What day is it today? Clara paused for a moment. May 17th, May 17th. My heart skipped a beat. This is my 3rd year as a wife in the Prince of Yang's household. It was also the day Julian welcomed Vivian into his residence. Vivian was the white moonlight that Julian had longed for but could never have in his youth. She was supposed to marry and move to Jiaonan, but her fiancé passed away. So she returned to the capital after observing 3 years of mourning. The moment Julian saw her for the first time, he was completely captivated. In my past life, I couldn't accept it. Taking advantage of my pregnancy, I deliberately caused a scene on the day she entered the mansion. I dropped the teacup and in tears asked Julian if he was going to abandon me. Julian was still concerned about me back then, and he spent half the day comforting me. But ever since then, there's been a hint of annoyance in the way he looks at me. He said I was petty. They say I'm jealous. Since Vivian is all alone and has no one to turn to, I shouldn't make things difficult for her. Later, Vivian became the princess consort of the Prince of Yom. Later, when Julian ascended the throne, she became empress. And as I rose from the rank of secondary consort to that of noble consort Zhao, I spent more than a decade locked in a power struggle with her. They fought until my child died. I fought until I died. Seeing the look on my face, Clara whispered, "Consort, the prince just sent word that Miss Yu is staying at the mansion temporarily today. So, you don't need to go over to greet her." I laughed when I heard that. In my past life, I was so furious that I smashed half the stuff in the room. Right now, I just feel relieved. If I don't go, I don't go. Clara looked at me in surprise. Isn't the secondary consort upset? I ran my hand over my flat stomach, which hadn't yet begun to show. My son is there. In this life, he is still alive. I suddenly felt that even if the sky were to fall, it wouldn't be such a big deal. What's there to be upset about? I took the medication to help the pregnancy and slowly drink it all. The medicine is very bitter. No matter how hard it is, it's still better than that bowl of hot porridge in the cold palace that I'll never get to eat. Clara was still worried. But now that Miss Yu has arrived, I'm afraid she might steal him away. Clara didn't dare to speak. I handed her the empty bowl. Then let her flirt. If you can't keep a man's heart, he'll run away even if you tie him down with a rope. Clara froze. I leaned back against the soft pillow and closed my eyes. Pass on the message. I'm not feeling well today and won't be seeing any visitors. From that day on in my past life, I turned myself into the most caustic and spiteful woman in Julian's eyes. In this life, I want to live differently. I just want to have my son safely and without any complications. On the night Vivian entered the mansion, Julian did not come to my courtyard. Clara was so angry she didn't sleep a wink all night. I, on the other hand, slept very well. When I woke up the next day, the sunlight streaming through the window was just right. While Clara was combing my hair, she couldn't help but mutter to herself, "The prince has really gone too far. His secondary consort is pregnant, yet he spent the whole night talking with Miss Yu." The servants in the mansion are all talking about it. I picked out a plain silver hairpin. Don't worry about it. But, Clara. I looked at myself in the mirror, young and vibrant. Her eyes and brows still free of the bitterness and weariness that would come later. The least valuable thing in this world is a man's fleeting compassion. Clara didn't understand. I don't expect her to understand right now, either. That afternoon, Vivian arrived. She was wearing a moon-white dress and her face looked a little pale, like a pear blossom drenched by the rain. In my past life, I hated her most when she looked like that. Even though she didn't do anything, she still managed to make everyone feel sorry for her. Looking back on it now, I just feel sorry for her. Being cherished by Julian isn't necessarily a blessing. Little sister. Her voice was soft. I heard you weren't feeling well, so I came to check on you. I didn't get up. I just smiled. Thank you. Miss Yu. Her expression faltered slightly. I guess they didn't expect me to be so polite and distant. In my past life, I called her sister all the time, but in reality every word I said was laced with sarcasm. I can't be bothered to tease her right now. So, what if the thorn won? If Julian were to show favoritism, even a single tear from her would be worth more than all my injuries combined. Vivian had her maid bring some tonics. I'll take it all. She had been sitting there for about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea when Julian arrived. He was walking very quickly. As soon as I walked in, his gaze fell first on Vivian. Seeing her sitting there perfectly fine, he turned to look at me. "I heard you're sick," I said casually. "I'm experiencing a little morning sickness, but it's nothing serious." Julian frowned. "If you're not feeling well, why did you let Vivian come see you?" I smiled. Before it even started, I had already become the one who didn't know any better. Vivian hurriedly explained. I came here on my own. It has nothing to do with my sister. Julian's gaze softened instantly as he looked at her. You're not feeling well. Why push yourself so hard? I looked down and sipped my tea, not responding. Julian seemed a little taken aback by my silence. He glanced at me. You're being quite sensible today. Mature. In my past life, those two words were the ones I hated most. I'm mature, so I'll let my husband go. Set down my teacup, my tone calm. I'm a little tired. I want to rest. Julian stared at me for a moment. He was probably trying to read some sense of grievance, resentment, or feigned magnanimity on my face. Unfortunately, none of them did. I'm really tired. In the end, he left with Vivian. As soon as Clara and the others left, they immediately panicked. Second consort, how could you push the prince toward her? I placed my hand on my lower abdomen and closed my eyes. Even if we didn't push him, he'd go anyway. Why make yourself unhappy? 3 months later, the imperial court arranged a marriage. Vivian became the princess consort of the Prince of Yong. The mansion was decked out with lanterns and decorations, and the festivities lasted for 7 full days. I moved to Tingzhu Courtyard on the west side. It's in a remote area, far from the main courtyard, and few people go there on a typical day. In my past life, I absolutely refused to move. I feel like moving would be admitting defeat. So, she stayed right under Julian's nose day after day, watching him and Vivian live in perfect harmony, until she turned herself into a bitter, resentful woman. This time around, I brought it up myself. When Julian came to ask me, he had a complex look on his face. Tingzhu Courtyard is too far out of the way. It wouldn't be convenient for you while you're pregnant. I smiled and said, it's quiet here. Perfect for taking care of my pregnancy. He looked at me for a long time. Do you really not mind Vivian coming to live here? I asked in return, Your Highness, do you want to hear the truth? Or do you want to hear what's politically correct? Julian paused. I lowered my gaze. The truth is, it doesn't matter if I mind. To put it bluntly, since the prince and the princess are a perfect match, I'm naturally happy for the prince. His expression darkened. You blame me. I wouldn't dare. Is it fear? Or is it lack of resentment? I didn't say anything. In my past life, I spent my entire life harboring resentment. This time, I don't want to complain. Holding a grudge takes effort. I want to save my strength for my child. Julian finally agreed. On the day I moved into Tingzhu Courtyard, Clara spoke up for me. It's so quiet here, there aren't even many potted flowers. I stood in the courtyard watching the new bamboo shoots sprouting from the corner of the wall. It's nice and quiet. When things are quiet, there's less trouble. If there is less trouble, the child will be safe. My son was born in late fall. The wind was strong that night and the bamboo leaves rustled outside the window. I was in pain all night long. The midwife said the baby was in the wrong position, and basin after basin of bloody fluid was carried out. Clara cried until her eyes were all puffy. Julian came by once but was called away by someone from the main courtyard. She said the princess was feeling a pain in her chest. In my past life, I hated it so much I could have ground my teeth to dust. In this life, I just clung to the edge of the bed and told the midwife, "Save the baby." As dawn was breaking, my son finally burst into tears. The sound is loud. When I heard that crying, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. My child came back. Julian came to the listening to bamboo courtyard 3 days later. He held my son in his arms, a rare, genuine smile spreading across his face. This child takes after me in her eyes and eyebrows. I leaned weakly against the headboard and said nothing. It doesn't matter whether he looks like him or not. My son is my life. Julian played with the child for a while, then said, Vivian has prepared a longevity lock for the child. She'll have someone bring it over later. I said calmly, please thank the princess consort for me. He was a little surprised. You've really changed. I smiled. When a woman becomes a mother, she always changes. He looked at me, and for a moment, his eyes darkened. But soon, a messenger from the main palace arrived to say that the princess consort was waiting for him to have dinner. He handed the child back to the wet nurse and left. Clara was indignant, but I just kept looking at my son in his swaddling clothes. He was sleeping soundly, his little hands clenched into fists. In this life, I do not ask that he be favored, nor do I ask that he be wealthy and powerful. All I want is for him to be alive. The year Julian ascended the throne, my son was 6 years old. Vivian became empress. I conferred the title of consort Ning upon her. The rank isn't too high or too low, it's just right for me. The Tingzhu courtyard was renamed Yong'an Palace. It has a nice name, but it's still in a remote area. I'm very satisfied. On the day of the palace move, Clara couldn't help but say, "Your Highness, since you gave birth to the crown prince, you should at least be a noble consort." I'm sewing a knee brace for my son. He's been learning to ride and shoot recently, but he keeps falling off. What's so great about the imperial consort? I bit through the end of the string. The higher your rank, the bigger a target you are. Clara whispered, "But Her Majesty the Empress has no son, and you have the crown prince." I looked up at her. She immediately shut up. My son is my Achilles heel. No one can use him to vie for that seat. At least not right now. The harem soon became a hive of activity after Julian ascended the throne. He selected a group of new officials. Among them, Celeste was the most favored. Her father was the general of the northern frontier and held military power. She was a radiant and flamboyant woman. Less than 3 months after entering the palace, she was granted the title of Jiaoyi. When Celeste first came to pay her respects to the empress, she was dressed in a court gown of begonia red and adorned with pearls and jade, stealing some of the empress's limelight. When she saw me, she smiled meaningfully. "Is Consort Ning the biological mother of the crown prince?" I nodded. She smiled softly. "You don't really look like someone with a child that old." That sounds like a compliment, but it actually means I'm old and out of favor. I took a sip of tea. Consort Celeste doesn't seem like someone who's just entered the palace. Her expression froze. I set down my teacup. "You're so eloquent it's as if you'd spent 10 years practicing in the palace." There was a moment of silence in the hall. Empress Vivian lowered her gaze as if trying to suppress a smile. Celeste bit her lip, but ultimately didn't dare to lose her temper. "I don't want to upset her. It's just that with some people, the more you back down, the more they think you're an easy target. In a past life, she once wronged me. She was partly to blame for my son's death. In this lifetime, I won't go out of my way to harm anyone, but if anyone dares to lay a hand on my child, I'll chop off her hand." Julian began visiting Yong'an Palace. At first, I came to see my son. Later, my son fell asleep, but he didn't leave. One time, I was helping my son copy a primer. Julian sat there watching for a while, then suddenly said, "You hardly ever look at me these days." My pen hesitated. The Emperor is the Son of Heaven. This humble servant dares not look directly at him. He gave a cold laugh. "Stop trying to fob me off with that kind of talk." I put down my pen. What would the Emperor like to hear? Julian stared at me. "You weren't like this before." He had said those words in his previous life as well, before I was cast aside. I asked him through my tears why he didn't believe me. He said, "You weren't always such a cruel person." Now, when he says the same thing, his tone is completely different, like dissatisfaction. It's also like confusion. I looked down to organize the papers. Back when I was young, I didn't know any better. Do you understand now? Now I value my life. Julian fell silent. I know what he's thinking. He's gotten used to me chasing after him. I'm used to crying for him, making a scene for him, getting jealous for him, and fighting my way through the harem for him. I don't run anymore. On the contrary, he felt empty. That's just how men are. When you offer him your heart, he finds it too heavy. Once you take it back, he'll feel out of place again. After my son woke up, Julian played a game of chess with him. My son lost. His face turned bright red, but he didn't cry. Julian's smile later a rare occurrence. That shows some backbone. He ruffled my son's hair. "Starting tomorrow, come to the Imperial study after school and I will teach you myself." My heart skipped a beat. That's not a good thing to outsiders. The emperor personally instructing the crown prince was seen as a sign that he was the heir apparent. I quickly said, "My son is still young. I'm afraid he might disturb the emperor while he's attending to state affairs." Julian looked at me. "He is my eldest son." "I know. Your Majesty, don't you want him to succeed?" I suppressed the chill in my heart. "All I want is for him to be safe." Julian's eyes flickered slightly. "In my past life, I went to great lengths so my son would give me a second glance. Now, when I say I just want peace, he doesn't believe me. In the end, he issued the decree. My son went to the imperial study for 1 hour every day. After the news spread, more people began to bring gifts to the gates of Yon Palace. I won't take a single one. Clara asked me if I was being too rude. I said, "Once you've saved face, the knife will follow." Sure enough, 3 days later, my son nearly had an accident in the upper study. That afternoon, a palace attendant rushed back in a panic saying that the crown prince had coughed up blood in the imperial study. The teacup in my hand crashed to the floor. When I arrived, my son was lying on a couch in the side hall, his face pale and ashen. "The court physician hasn't arrived yet." I rushed over and grabbed his wrist. "The pulse is extremely irregular. Poisoning." I looked at the pastries on the table. Jujube paste cookies. In his previous life, my son ate this food, began suffering from abdominal pain that night, and died 3 days later when the poison took effect. At that time, I begged Julian through my tears to conduct a thorough investigation. After a thorough investigation, the only person arrested was a young palace maid who had taken her own life out of fear of punishment. I don't believe it, but Julian said that the harem must not be thrown into chaos. Now, the same tactics are being used again. On the contrary, I calmed down. "Clara, bring me my medicine box." Clara Fei Express has delivered it. Over the years, I've been studying traditional Chinese medicine and pharmacology, and I've privately stockpiled quite a few detoxification pills. I was afraid this day would come. I pried open my son's mouth, fed him the medicine, and then had someone force-feed him the emetic. My son vomited for a long time until all that was left was sour liquid. My hand was still shaking when the court physician arrived. It's not that I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it. It's because I'm afraid of being a step too late. Julian arrived shortly afterward, his face dark with anger. "What's going on?" The court physician knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, the crown prince was poisoned. Fortunately, Consort Ning acted promptly. Otherwise," Julian looked at me. I held my son in my arms and spoke very softly. "Your Majesty, I demand an explanation," he said in a deep voice. "I will look into it. Will anyone who's found out be dealt with?" Julian frowned. I looked up at him. "If it were the Empress, would you deal with her?" The hall fell instantly silent. Julian's expression darkened. "Consort Ning, choose your words carefully." I laughed. Just as I thought. Just like in my past life. Whenever something might involve Vivian, his first reaction is always to tell me to be careful with what I say. I looked down at my son's pale little face and suddenly felt it was all so absurd. What am I still hoping for anyway? Soon, the Empress arrived. Vivian's face had gone pale, and her hair was slightly disheveled. When she saw my son, her eyes were filled with genuine concern. "How is the child?" I looked at her. In my past life, I always thought she was the one who killed my son. This is because the poison was detected in the pastries sent from Fenny Palace. But this time, I suddenly wasn't so sure. Vivian walked up to Julian and knelt down immediately. "Your Majesty, the pastry sent to the imperial study today came from my palace. I am willing to submit to an investigation." Julian was taken aback. "Vivian, you don't have to, we must investigate." She interrupted him, her tone unusually cold. "The prince has been poisoned. If this matter is swept under the rug simply because I am the Empress, what kind of order will there be in the harem?" I looked at her and my heart fluttered slightly. In her past life, Vivian had never been this assertive. Maybe it's not that she can't, but we were fighting so fiercely at the time that she didn't have a chance to turn the blade on the real enemy. The drug was traced back to Celeste. It is not direct evidence. She's very smart. The one who did it was a cleaning maid from Fenny Palace. The palace maid's younger brother works under the general of the northern frontier. Celeste threatened her with her younger brother's life, forcing her to slip poison into the pastries being sent to the imperial study. If the plan succeeds, my son will die and the Empress will take the blame. If that doesn't work, it could also spark a conflict between me and the Empress. Kill two birds with one stone. Julian looked at the evidence, his face darkening. Celeste knelt in the hall, weeping so bitterly that her tears looked like raindrops on pear blossoms. Your Majesty, I am innocent. Someone must be framing me. Her father had just distinguished himself at the frontier. Julian didn't want to touch her. I see what you mean. Vivian noticed it, too. So, before Julian could speak, I laughed first. If your Majesty is unwilling to punish Consort Celeste, that is all right. Julian looked at me. I only ask that your Majesty issue an edict. I knelt down. Starting today, I will personally attend to the Crown Prince's daily needs. If anyone dares to harm him again, I will seek justice myself. Celeste's expression changed slightly. Julian frowned. Are you threatening me? I looked up. I dare not. Your Majesty, I'm just afraid. I looked at my son, who was still asleep on the bed. I'm afraid if I'm even a moment too late, I won't even get to see my child one last time. Julian fell silent. Vivian suddenly said, Your Majesty, the evidence is irrefutable that Consort Celeste plotted to harm the Crown Prince. If she is let off lightly simply because of the Celeste family's military merits, everyone will follow suit in the future. Wouldn't the Crown Prince's life then depend entirely on the power and influence of his mother's family? Julian looked at her. Celeste snapped. Your Majesty, the Empress, please stop making baseless accusations. Vivian said coldly. Slap her across the face. A matron from Feather's Palace stepped forward and slapped Celeste hard across the face. I actually felt a twinge of satisfaction. In my past life, the Empress and I fought until we were both left battered and bruised, allowing someone like Celeste to take advantage of the situation. In this lifetime, we won't be fighting over men instead. We'll be able to see clearly who the real Viper is. Celeste was demoted to the rank of Karen and placed under house arrest for 6 months. As for her father, Julian has not taken any action for the time being. I know it's not enough. The Celeste family is powerful. So, Celeste won't give up just like that. But, that's okay. I have plenty of patience. In a past life, she caused me to lose my child. In this lifetime, I want her to watch the Celeste family fall with her own eyes. After I woke up, my son held me and cried for a long time. He rarely cries. Even at such a young age, I always wanted to act like a grown-up. But, this time, he was truly scared. Mother, did I almost die? I felt a twinge of pain in my chest and held him close. No. Mother is here. But, the pastries were sent by Her Majesty the Empress. I stroked his head. My son, what you see with your own eyes isn't necessarily the truth. He looked up at me. I whispered, the person who wronged you wants nothing more than for you to hate the wrong person. He seemed to understand, but not quite. I didn't say anything else. There are some things he'll come to understand over time. That evening, Vivian arrived at Yongning Palace. She didn't bring many people with her. She only had her personal nurse carry a box of medicinal herbs. This is a reishi mushroom my father found in the southern lands. It's good for a child's health. I told Clara to take it. After sitting down, Vivian suddenly said, I used to think you hated me. I smiled. I did hate him back then. She paused for a moment. I looked at her, but then I realized, you're not the one I should be resenting. Vivian lowered her eyes. I used to be wary of you, too. I know. I thought you'd use my son to vie for the throne and try to harm me. Does the Empress still feel that way? She looked toward the inner room. My son was asleep. His little face still looking a bit pale. Vivian said softly, Now I think you just want him to stay alive. I felt a lump in my throat. Yes, I just want him to be alive. But even such a simple wish from my past life, I never managed to fulfill it. Vivian was silent for a moment, then said, From now on, have someone from Fenny Palace accompany my son to and from school. It's about time I clean house in my own palace. 2. I looked at her. Does Her Majesty the Empress not fear being used by me? She smiled with a hint of bitterness. In this harem, who isn't being used? At least you want to protect your child. As for me, I want to uphold the rules of the imperial palace. We looked at each other for a moment. Two people who fought to the death in a past life have, in this one, become allies. How ironic. That really felt great. After Celeste was confined to her quarters, a new concubine was brought into the palace. This time, it was Sophia from Jiangnan who found favor. She doesn't look like Vivian. He doesn't look like anyone else, either. She was gentle and intelligent, and there was always a hint of shyness in her voice. Julian really liked it. He stayed at her place for half a month straight. Everyone in the harem was waiting to see the Empress make a fool of herself. But Vivian wasn't sick. Nor was she acting up. She went about her palace duties as usual and paid her respects to the Empress Dowager as usual. Julian, on the other hand, couldn't sit still. One day, when he came to Yongmin Palace, he asked me, "Has the Empress said anything to you lately? I'm helping my son study right now." Upon hearing this, he simply replied, "Her Majesty the Empress is well." Julian frowned. Does she really not care? I looked up at him. Does the Emperor want the Empress to care? He choked. I lowered my gaze. For the Emperor to favor a new concubine while hoping to hurt an old one is a bit too greedy. Silence fell over the hall. Clara turned pale with fear. Julian looked at me, and after a moment, he didn't get angry after all. "You're becoming less and less afraid to speak to me now," I said calmly. "I am merely speaking the truth." He suddenly sat down across from me. "If this had happened before, you would have cried." I didn't say anything. "You will ask me why I have once again shown favor to someone else." I smiled. "I don't know how to do that anymore." "Why?" I looked at the page in my hand. "Because it's not worth it." Julian's expression changed. I knew those words had hurt his feelings, but I don't want to comfort him. In my past life, I cuddled him for far too many years. After all that coaxing, he thought my pain was nothing to speak of. When Julian left, his expression was cold. Clara was on the edge of her seat for me. "Your Highness, why must you speak so defiantly to the Emperor?" I looked out the window. I wasn't being disrespectful. I'm just too lazy to pretend anymore. Julian began visiting Yongmin Palace frequently. Sometimes I watch my son. Other times, I just sit and drink tea, but I've always been rather indifferent toward him. Whatever he bestows, I am grateful. I listen to whatever he says. He moved closer, and I stepped aside. Finally, one day, he couldn't help but ask, "Lily, do you no longer love me?" The teacup in my hand wobbled slightly. "Lily, it's been a long time since he last called my name." I looked up. "Your Majesty is joking." Julian stared at me. "I want to hear the truth." I was silent for a long time. Then he smiled. "The truth is, I stopped loving him a long time ago." Julian's expression darkened instantly. "When?" I thought about it. Perhaps it was when my son was poisoned that the Emperor's first instinct was to weigh the Celeste family's military power. He froze. Or perhaps even earlier. Back in my previous life, my son died in my arms, and that was when he told me there was no evidence, but he'll never know any of that. He'll just think I've suddenly changed. Julian swept his sleeve and walked away. I know he's angry, but I felt nothing at all. The incident involving the Celeste family occurred the following spring. Celeste's father, the general of the northern frontier, embezzled military rations to maintain a private army. The evidence was uncovered by Vivian's older brother, but I was the one who gave the clue. The Celeste family's downfall in their previous life occurred 5 years later. By then, Celeste had already become a consort of honor, and the Celeste family was a powerful and influential clan with far-reaching connections. In this lifetime, I laid the groundwork ahead of time. Celeste's father was corrupt. Greedy people are the most likely to give themselves away. The imperial court was shaken. Celeste heard the news while under house arrest and began pounding on the door like a madwoman. She requested an audience with Julian. Julian didn't see him. He again sought an audience with the Empress. Vivian hadn't seen her either. In the end, She actually came to me for help. When I went to see her, she was no longer as radiant as she used to be. Her hair was tousled and her face was pale. When she saw me come in, she rushed over and grabbed the railing. "It's you, isn't it?" I watched her quietly. "What did you say?" "Something happened to the Celeste family. You did it." I laughed. "The Celeste family withheld military pay. How did that become my fault?" Celeste glared at me intently. "Lily, I only wanted to get rid of your son, yet you're willing to wipe out my entire family." The smile on my face gradually faded. But I took a step closer. "Celeste, you've harmed my child." She took a half step back, startled by my gaze. I whispered, "You should count yourself lucky that my son is alive. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be alive and standing here talking to me right now." Celeste suddenly laughed. "Why are you acting so high and mighty? Who in this harem has clean hands? Aren't you just as cruel?" I nodded. "Yes, I've never claimed to be kind. I just don't go out of my way to hurt people." I stared at her and said, word for word, "But whoever harms my child, I'll make her pay 100-fold." Celeste slumped to the ground. 3 days later, the Celeste family's property was confiscated. Celeste's father was beheaded. Celeste bestowed white silk. I heard she kept calling out Julian's name right up until she died. But Julian didn't go. It wasn't until her death that she realized a ruler's favor was never a talisman. That thing is thinner than paper. It burst as soon as the wind blew. After the fall of the Celeste family, calls within the court for the appointment of a crown prince grew louder and louder. At the age of 12, my son was already able to review some simple memorials on behalf of Julian. He is intelligent, level-headed, and has faced life and death situations. So, he understands the importance of restraint better than other children his age. Julian was very pleased. The Empress Dowager often praised him as well, but I still feel a bit on edge. The position of Crown Prince is both an honor and a path fraught with danger. I asked my son, "Do you want that position?" My son was silent for a long time. "Does mother want me to compete?" I shook my head. "Your mother just wants you to live a good life." He looked at me. "But if I don't fight back, will others leave us alone?" I was at a loss for words. "He's all grown up now." She was no longer the child who used to curl up in my arms and cry after being poisoned. He took my hand. "Mother, I want to compete." My heart skipped a beat. My son said earnestly, "It's not for power or influence. It's so that no one will ever be able to harm my mother again." At that moment, I almost burst into tears. In my past life, I spent my entire life striving just so Julian would glance at me one more time. In this life, my son is fighting, but it's to protect me. I ruffled his hair. "If you're going to compete, there's one thing you need to remember." "What?" "Don't turn out like your father." My son nodded. "Your son will remember that." 6 months later, Julian named my son as Crown Prince. On the day of the coronation ceremony, the entire palace was filled with well-wishers. I stood at the foot of the platform, watching my son walk step by step toward Julian. The boy stood tall with bright, clear eyes and a clear brow. As he accepted the golden scroll conferring the title of Crown Prince, he turned and glanced at me. I smiled at him. The child who died in my arms in my past life has finally stepped into the sunlight. After the ceremony, Julian asked me to stay and talk with him in the Imperial Garden. The flowers are blooming beautifully this spring. But he looked at me and suddenly said, "Lily, have you ever regretted it for even a moment all these years?" I asked, "What do you regret?" "I regret no longer contending for the throne." I laughed. "No." His eyes darkened for a moment. "You're certainly honest." I gazed at the palace walls in the distance. "Your Majesty, I actually did try. Fight until your head is split open, and fight until you're unrecognizable." I later realized that you can't win people's hearts through competition. If it's not yours, it'll slip away even if you take it. Julian was silent for a long time. "What if I were to change my mind now?" I looked at him. "I've been waiting for those words for half my life. Until the child dies. Until Clara died. Until I die all alone in the cold palace. But now that I hear it, I feel it's too late. It's too late." I bowed. This humble servant thanks His Majesty for his great kindness. It's just that I am getting on in years, and my heart has grown cold. I cannot accept this." Julian's face turned pale. He seemed to finally realize that once certain things are lost, they can never be regained. He asked in a low voice, "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. I don't hate him anymore. Just as a glimmer of light began to appear in his eyes, I added, "Hate is also a form of longing. I no longer have any feelings for His Majesty." Julian stood there, saying nothing for a long time. The wind blew petals all over the ground. I turned and walked away. This time, he didn't call out to me. When my son was 18, Julian fell seriously ill. The Crown Prince served as regent. The imperial court is stable. Vivian remained the empress. Over the years, she had grown increasingly serene, and no one in the palace, high or low, dared to disobey her. I occasionally have tea with her. Let's not talk about Julian. Let's talk only about my son, palace affairs, and spring flowers. One time, she suddenly said, "If we hadn't fought so hard over him back then, maybe we would have become friends sooner." I smiled. "It's not too late." She looked at me, a sense of relief in her eyes. "Yes, it's not too late." On his deathbed, Julian summoned me to see him. I didn't really want to go, but my son said, "Mother, go. Think of it as putting the past to rest." I went. The smell of medicine was very strong inside the hall. Julian lay on the imperial couch, so thin he was almost unrecognizable. He is no longer the spirited Prince of Yong he once was. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Lily." I stood by the bed. "Your Majesty." He gave a wry smile. "Even though I'm about to die, won't you even call me Julian?" I didn't say anything. He reached out with some effort, as if trying to touch me. I didn't hide, but in the end he didn't raise his hand. "All these years, I've been dreaming of you," I replied calmly. "I have been in the palace the whole time." "No." He shook his head. "You in my dreams aren't like this. You'll cry. You'll throw tantrums. And you'll look at me and smile." I lowered my gaze. That was me in a past life, but that version of me died long ago on a snowy night in the cold palace. A tear rolled down the corner of Julian's eye. "Did I lose you?" I whispered. "The Emperor has never known the real me." He froze. I continued. "All you ever had was a Lily who loved you so much that she lost herself. She died later." Julian began to breathe heavily. The court physician hurried forward, but he just stared at me intently. In the next life, I interrupted him. "Your Majesty, there is no afterlife. Even if there were, I wouldn't run into you again." The light in his eyes gradually dimmed. That night, Julian passed away. My son ascended the throne. Vivian became Empress Dowager. I became a Grand Duchess. The new emperor wanted to honor me as the Holy Empress Dowager, but I refused. The court officials were in an uproar. I simply said, "The Empress Dowager is still alive. We must not violate the rules of propriety." Actually, it wasn't for the gift. I just think those empty titles are meaningless. My son came to ask me what I wanted. I said, "I'd like to leave the palace for a while." He was startled. "Has mother abandoned her son?" I smiled and ruffled his hair. "Even though he's the emperor now, he's still just like he was when he was a kid around me. Mother simply wanted to see the sky outside the palace." My son's eyes welled up. "Then I'll accompany you." "That's nonsense." I smoothed out his shirt collar for him. "You're the emperor. You can't just leave on a whim." He whispered, "But Your Highness, I cannot bear to part with my mother. I'm a total softie. Your mother can't bear to part with you either." "But my son, a person can't spend their whole life confined to a palace. You are no different." He seemed to understand, but not quite. Later, he built a country house for me on the outskirts of Beijing. The courtyard is filled with bamboo, just like the listening to bamboo courtyard back in the day. On the day I moved in, Clara stayed by my side, smiling with her eyes crinkled. She's getting old, too, but she's still doing just fine. As I looked at her, I suddenly remembered that night in the cold palace. At that time, she said, If there is an afterlife, don't enter the palace again. Now, I suppose I've at least partly fulfilled her wish. The annex is peaceful, listening to the rain in spring, watching the lotus flowers in summer, brewing tea in autumn, and gathering around the stove in winter. My son comes every month. He wouldn't allow anyone to announce his arrival. He always liked to walk in wearing his everyday clothes, just like the son of an ordinary family returning to visit his mother. Sometimes he would talk to me about the difficulties facing the court. I listened, but rarely intervened. I just reminded him, don't take for granted those who treat you with sincerity. He nodded. Your humble son remembers. I know he'll be a good emperor. At least not like Julian. Many years later, I fell ill. It's not that heavy. It's just that as people get older, this day is bound to come. My son rushed over from the palace in the middle of the night and sat by my bedside, his eyes red and swollen. Mother, the court physician says you'll get better. I laughed. You're a grandfather now. Why are you still such a crybaby? He held my hand. I do not want to lose my mother. I looked at him. In a past life, he left me when he was 5 years old. In this life, he grew up safely, became emperor, and had children of his own. That's enough. Enough is enough. Clara brought the medicine in, her eyes red-rimmed. I drank half a bowl, but I really couldn't drink anymore. The shadows of the bamboo swayed outside the window. The wind blew, rustling softly. I suddenly felt a sense of peace. For the rest of my life, I never tried to win Julian's heart again. I am no longer trapped in resentment. I protected my child, and I protected myself. That's good enough. Last night, I had a dream. I dreamed of heavy snow in the cold palace. As a young man, I lay on a rickety cot while Clara knelt by the bed, weeping. I walked over and gently embraced that bedraggled version of myself. I said to her, don't be afraid. This time, we won. When I woke up, the sky was just beginning to lighten. My son fell asleep by my bedside, his hand still clasped tightly around mine. I gently stroked his head, just like when he was a kid. Clara whispered from the side, has Her Highness woken up? I looked out the window. Morning dew glistened on the bamboo leaves. Clara, I'm here. This life has truly been wonderful. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. I closed my eyes. A smile. I died in the cold palace on New Year's Eve, my heart filled with resentment. In this life, I died on a spring morning surrounded by my son, old friends, and a gentle breeze filling the courtyard. I am finally no longer anyone's favorite concubine, anyone's abandoned wife, or anyone's vengeful spirit. I'm just Lily, someone who crawled out of the mud and lived a good life again.